The deep space vessel Aurora drifted through the darkness between stars, its metal hull catching faint light from distant suns. Captain Marcus Webb stood at the observation window, his coffee growing cold in his hands as he stared at the readings on his tablet. Something was out there, something that should not exist. "Captain, you need to see this," called Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka from her station. Her voice carried that particular edge of excitement that Marcus had learned to recognize over their 3 years together in the void. He walked over to her console, his boots making soft sounds against the floor. The screen showed a structure floating in the emptiness ahead. It was massive, perhaps 10 kilometers across, shaped like a great spiral shell made of dark metal. There were no lights, no signals, nothing to suggest life. But the shape was too perfect to be natural. "How old is it?" Marcus asked. Yuki shook her head slowly. "The computer cannot calculate. The metal composition does not match anything in our database. Sir, I think it might be older than Earth itself." The crew gathered on the bridge as the news spread through the ship. There were 20 of them in total, a small team sent by the United Earth Exploration Corps to map the outer regions of the galaxy. They had found strange things before, dead worlds and empty stations left by long-gone civilizations, but nothing like this. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's lead scientist, studied the images with wide eyes. The Galactic Archive speaks of a species called the Architects. They were said to be the first intelligent beings in this part of the universe. They vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind structures that no one has ever been able to enter. "And you think this is one of their buildings?" Marcus asked. "I think it might be something more important. The legends say the architects stored all their knowledge in hidden vaults, waiting for species they considered worthy to find them. Every advanced civilization in the galaxy has searched for these vaults. None have succeeded." Marcus looked around at his crew. He saw the same hunger in their eyes that he felt in his own chest. Humanity had only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. They were young and eager, always pushing forward, always wanting to know what lay beyond the next horizon. It was what made them human. "We're going in," he said. The shuttle approached the structure slowly, its lights cutting through the darkness. Marcus piloted while Elena sat beside him, running scans and speaking into her recorder. Behind them sat Chief Engineer Omar Hassan and Security Officer Jin Park, both armed and ready for anything. "The outer shell appears to be made of a material that absorbs most forms of energy," Elena said. "That is why no one detected it before. We only found it because we were looking for gravitational anomalies rather than electromagnetic signals." "Humans and their strange methods," Omar said with a smile. "The Kelari use only light-based sensors. The Vorthox rely on magnetic fields. We use everything because we do not know what we are supposed to use." "Sometimes not knowing the right way leads you to find a better way," Marcus replied. They found an opening in the shell, a dark doorway that seemed to swallow their lights. Marcus guided the shuttle inside and set it down on a smooth floor. The moment the engine stopped, something happened. Lights flickered to life along the walls, pale blue and ancient, but still working after all this time. "It knows we are here," Jin said quietly, her hand on her weapon. They stepped out of the shuttle and looked around. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows above. Strange symbols covered the walls, flowing patterns that hurt the eyes if you stared at them too long. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on the pedestal sat a crystal that glowed with soft inner light. Elena approached it carefully, her scanner beeping and clicking. "The energy readings are incredible. This single crystal contains more stored information than all the libraries of Earth combined, perhaps more than all the libraries in the galaxy." "Can we access it?" Marcus asked. "I do not know. The technology is so far beyond ours that I cannot even understand the basic principles. It would be like showing a smartphone to someone from ancient Egypt." Marcus stepped forward and looked at the crystal. It was beautiful, shifting colors moving inside it like living things. Without really thinking about why, he reached out his hand. "Captain, wait," Alina started to say. His fingers touched the crystal's surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then light exploded through the room, and Marcus felt something enter his mind. It was not painful, but it was overwhelming, like standing under a waterfall of pure knowledge. Images flashed before his eyes, concepts that had no words in any human language, memories of beings who had watched stars being born and dying. He fell to his knees, gasping. The others rushed to his side, but he held up a hand to stop them. "I'm okay," he said, though his voice shook. "It spoke to me, or showed me, I'm not sure which." "What did it say?" Alina asked. Marcus looked up at the crystal, which now pulsed with a warm, golden light. "It said we passed the test. It has been waiting for a species that would reach out without fear, that would touch the unknown with curiosity rather than caution. It said that is rare. Most species become careful as they grow older. They lose the fire that drove them to explore in the first place." "And humans?" Omar asked. "We are young and foolish and wonderful. That is what it showed me. Every other species that found this place stood at the entrance and studied it from a distance. They sent probes and robots and took measurements. None of them simply walked in and touched what they found. None of them trusted their instincts the way humans do." Alina stared at the crystal with new understanding. It was not a treasure vault at all. It was a test to find species that still had the spirit of true explorers. Marcus nodded and stood up slowly. "And now that we passed, it wants to give us everything. All the knowledge of the architects, all their discoveries and inventions and understanding. It has been waiting millions of years for someone worthy." Jin looked around the chamber nervously. "That is a lot of power. Are we ready for it?" "We have to be," Marcus said. "Because if we don't take it, it will wait for someone else. And the next species to find this place might not be friendly." He reached out and touched the crystal again. Back on Earth, the news arrived like a thunderbolt. The Aurora had found something unprecedented, something that would change everything. The United Earth Council called an emergency meeting, and representatives from 100 nations gathered to hear the transmission from the distant ship. "This is Captain Marcus Webb of the Aurora," the message began. "We have made first contact with the knowledge repository of a species called the Architects. They left their entire civilizations learning in hidden vaults across the galaxy, waiting for explorers who proved themselves worthy. We accessed their smallest cache, and we now possess information that will take us centuries to fully understand. We are coming home." The room erupted in chaos. Some cheered while others worried about what this would mean. The alien ambassadors present watched with careful eyes, their faces showing various expressions of surprise and concern. The Kelari ambassador leaned toward her aide and whispered, "The humans found an architect vault. In 200 years of space travel, they found what we have searched for over 10,000. Her aide had no answer. Aboard the Aurora, the crew worked without rest as the ship began its long journey home. Alina spent every waking hour trying to catalog what the crystal had given them, but it was like trying to count grains of sand on a beach. There was simply too much. "I found something interesting," she told Marcus one evening as they ate dinner together in the small galley. "The architects did not just store scientific knowledge. They stored the histories of every species they ever encountered, every civilization that rose and fell while they watched. They knew about the Kelari when they were still living in caves. They knew about the Vorthox before they discovered fire." "Did they know about humans?" Marcus asked. Alina smiled strangely. "They did. That is the interesting part. They made predictions about different species, guessing which ones might eventually reach the stars and find their vaults. For most species, they were correct within a few thousand years. For humans, they were wrong by millions." "What do you mean?" "They predicted that if humans ever developed space travel, It would take us another 2 million years based on our evolutionary path when they observed us. They thought we were too violent, too short-lived, too focused on immediate survival to ever look up at the stars. They were surprised by us, Captain. The architects who knew everything were surprised by what we became. Marcus felt a strange pride at that. Humanity had exceeded the expectations of beings who had watched the universe unfold since its early days. They had become something that even the architects could not predict. "Why do you think that happened?" he asked. Alina considered the question. "I think it is because we are fragile. We die easily and quickly compared to most species. So we learn to work together and to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. We learn to write things down so our children would not have to learn everything from the beginning. We turned our weakness into our greatest strength. And our curiosity. That too. We are afraid of the dark, Captain, so we learn to make fire. We are afraid of the unknown, so we explore it until it becomes known. Fear makes most species hide. It makes us reach out and grab." Marcus nodded slowly. He thought about all the humans who had come before him, all the explorers and scientists and dreamers who had pushed the boundaries of what was possible. He was standing on the shoulders of giants, and now he would give their descendants something extraordinary to stand upon. "We need to share this carefully," he said, "not just with Earth, with everyone." Alina looked surprised. "You want to share the architect knowledge with the other species. The Council might not approve. This could give humanity an advantage over everyone else for centuries." "That is exactly why we should not keep it for ourselves. We found this treasure, yes, but it does not belong to us. It belongs to everyone who ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. If we hoard it like jealous children, we become what the architects feared. We become another species that forgot how to dream." Alina smiled and raised her coffee cup in a toast. "Captain Marcus Webb, philosopher of the stars." "I learned it from touching that crystal," he admitted. "The architects did not want their knowledge used for power. They wanted it used for growth, for connection, for understanding. They hoped that whoever found their vaults would share rather than hoard. That is why they made them so hard to find. They wanted explorers, not conquerors." "And they got humans," Alina said. "The most unlikely explorers in the galaxy." "Exactly. Now we have to prove they were right to trust us." The journey home took 3 months. During that time, Marcus and his crew began the long process of organizing what they had found. They divided it into categories: science, history, medicine, philosophy, art. Each category contained more information than humanity had ever accumulated on its own. It was humbling and terrifying and wonderful all at once. When they finally reached Earth orbit, a fleet of ships came out to meet them. There were human vessels and alien ones, all waiting to see the treasure the Aurora had brought home. Marcus stood at the window and watched them approach, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "Are you ready?" Alina asked, standing beside him. "No," he admitted, "but I do not think anyone could be ready for this. We just have to do our best and hope it is enough." He took a deep breath and reached for the communication panel. It was time to change the universe. The United Earth Council chamber was packed with more beings than it had ever held before. Human delegates sat alongside ambassadors from 12 different alien species, all of them waiting to hear what Captain Marcus Webb and his crew had discovered. The air hummed with tension and excitement. Marcus stood at the podium, feeling small beneath the weight of so many watching eyes. He had practiced his speech 100 times on the journey home, but now the words seemed to slip away from him. He cleared his throat and began. "3 months ago, my crew and I found something incredible. Hidden in empty space, in a region where no one had ever thought to look, we discovered a vault left by the species known as the architects. Inside that vault was knowledge, more knowledge than anyone could imagine, the complete record of a civilization that watched the universe for millions of years." A murmur ran through the crowd. The Kelari ambassador leaned forward in her seat, her silver eyes wide. The Vorthox delegate, a massive being covered in dark scales, made a sound that might have been surprise or anger. Marcus continued, "Many of you have searched for the architect vaults for thousands of years. You developed careful methods and precise instruments. You sent probes and rovers and unmanned ships. You did everything correctly, everything logically, everything safely." He paused. "We did not. We simply walked in and touched what we found, and somehow that was the right answer." The Kelari ambassador stood. "Captain Webb, with respect, this seems like an impossibility. The architects designed their vaults to be unbreakable. We have found 17 of them across the galaxy, and none have ever been opened. How could humans, the youngest species in the Council, succeed where all others failed?" "I do not fully understand it myself," Marcus admitted. "But I think it comes down to something simple. You were careful because you understood the danger. We were not careful because we did not understand. Sometimes, ignorance and courage look very similar." The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates shouted that humans had no right to claim such a treasure. Others demanded to know what secrets the vault contained. Still others sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had heard. The council president, an elderly human woman named Director Sarah Chen, raised her hand for quiet. Slowly, the noise died down. "Captain Webb," she said, "what do you intend to do with this discovery?" Marcus looked out at the crowd, at the worried faces and the suspicious eyes. He thought about what Alina had told him, about the architects hoping their knowledge would be shared rather than hoarded. He thought about the future and what kind of species humanity wanted to become. "We intend to give it away," he said. The silence that followed was deeper than any that had come before. Even Director Chen looked surprised. "Give it away," the Vorthox delegate rumbled. "All of it to everyone." All of it to everyone. The architects left their knowledge for whoever found it, yes, but they did not leave it for one species. They left it for all species. They wanted it to lift everyone up together, not create new divisions and jealousies. If we keep this treasure for ourselves, we betray their trust and our own nature. The Kelari ambassador laughed, a strange musical sound. "This is madness. No species in the history of the galaxy has ever willingly shared such an advantage. You could rule the stars with what you have found." "We do not want to rule the stars," Marcus said simply. "We want to explore them. We want to learn and grow and become something better than we are today. That is what drives humans. Not power, not control. Curiosity, wonder, the need to know what lies beyond the next horizon. And we have discovered that those feelings are stronger when we share them with others." He pressed a button on the podium, and images appeared on the great screens around the chamber. They showed the vault, the crystal, and the first glimpses of the knowledge it contained. There were star maps showing regions of the galaxy that no one had ever explored. There were medical formulas that could cure diseases thought to be incurable. There were energy systems that could power civilizations for millions of years without fuel or pollution. "This is just the beginning," Marcus said. "The smallest fraction of what we found. It will take generations to understand it all, but we want to understand it together. Humans, Kelari, Vorthox, everyone. Because that is what the architects hoped for. That is what they were waiting for. A species that would bring everyone together instead of pulling them apart." Director Chen stood slowly. Her face showed something that might have been pride or tears or both. "Captain Webb, on behalf of the United Earth Council and the people of our planet, I accept your proposal. The architect knowledge will be shared freely with all species who wish to learn from it. This is the decision of humanity, made with open hearts and open hands." The chamber exploded again, but this time the sound was different. There was still argument and concern, but there was also hope. For the first time in the long history of the galactic community, a species had been given ultimate power and chosen not to use it for themselves. The Kelari ambassador approached Marcus after the session ended. Her silver eyes studied him with new interest. "You confuse me, human," she said. "Our people have been traveling the stars for 10,000 years. We have seen countless species rise and fall. We have watched civilizations destroy themselves with power and knowledge. And yet here you stand, the youngest of us all, giving away the greatest treasure in the universe as if it were nothing." Marcus shrugged. "It is not nothing. It is everything. That is why we have to share it. Keeping it would change us into something we do not want to become. Better to give it away and stay who we are." "And who are you exactly?" He thought about the question. Explorers, dreamers, troublemakers who cannot leave well enough alone. We poke at things we do not understand, touch crystals we should probably avoid, walk into dark places just to see what is there. We are foolish and brave and probably a little bit crazy, but we are also kind when we remember to be. And we want friends more than we want power. The ambassador was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled, a genuine expression that made her alien features seem almost warm. "Perhaps we underestimated your species," she said. "We thought you were too young, too unpredictable, too dangerous. But maybe those are exactly the qualities the universe needs right now. Maybe it is time for new explorers with new ideas." "Does this mean you accept our offer? You will join the knowledge-sharing project?" "We will do more than that. We will help you organize it, catalog it, make it accessible to everyone. The Kelari have skills in information management that you lack. Together, we can build something wonderful." Marcus felt a grin spreading across his face. "Partners, then." "Partners," the ambassador agreed. "Though I warn you, working with the Kelari is not easy. We are very precise and very demanding. Your casual human ways will frustrate us greatly. And your rigid Kelari methods will drive us crazy. It sounds perfect." They shook hands, human and alien, and in that moment something new began. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of the change. Not because they were powerful or wise or ancient, but because they were willing to share what they had found with everyone who wanted to learn. In the months that followed, research centers sprang up across the galaxy. Scientists from every species worked side by side, unlocking the secrets of the architects piece by piece. Diseases were cured. Dying worlds were restored. Old enemies began to talk instead of fight, united by the shared wonder of what they were discovering. And at the center of it all, the crew of the Aurora continued to explore. They found more vaults, more treasures, more wonders hidden in the dark spaces between stars. Each time, they shared what they found freely and openly. Each time, the community of species grew stronger. Marcus Webb became a legend, though he never liked the title. He preferred to think of himself as just another curious human, poking at things he did not understand and hopping for the best. But history would remember him differently. History would remember him as the man who changed everything by giving it all away. The discovery restored ancient knowledge to the galaxy, knowledge that had been lost for millions of years. But more importantly, it showed what was possible when beings chose to work together instead of fighting over scraps. The architects had waited a long time for someone to find their vaults. In the end, they got exactly what they hoped for. They got humans. Years passed and became decades. The knowledge from the vaults transformed everything it touched. Ships that once took months to cross the galaxy now made the journey in days. Planets that had been too harsh for life were made green and welcoming. The old barriers between species began to break down as everyone worked toward common goals. Captain Marcus Webb retired from exploration at the age of 62. His bones ached from too many years in changing gravity, and his eyes had seen more wonders than any human before him. He settled on a small colony world at the edge of known space, in a simple house with a view of the mountains. But he was not alone. His old crew visited often, and new explorers came to ask for his advice. The galaxy had grown larger and smaller at the same time, larger in what was known and smaller in how quickly anyone could reach anywhere. One evening, As the sun set behind the purple mountains, a shuttle landed in his yard. The door opened, and a young woman stepped out. She was perhaps 20 years old, with the eager look of someone about to begin a great adventure. "Captain Webb," she asked, "I'm sorry to bother you. I'm Lieutenant Maya Torres. I've just been assigned to the new exploration vessel Pioneer, and I wanted to ask you something before we launched." Marcus smiled and waved her toward the chairs on his porch. "Sit down, Lieutenant. Ask whatever you want. I have nothing but time these days." She sat and fidgeted for a moment, gathering her courage. "Sir, everyone says you changed the universe. They say you found the architect vaults and gave away power that could have made humanity rulers of the galaxy. But I need to know why. Why did you give it all away when you could have kept it?" Marcus looked out at the sunset, remembering that moment in the vault when he had touched the crystal for the first time. He remembered the flood of knowledge and the voice that spoke without words, telling him that humanity had been chosen because they were different. "Let me tell you a story," he said. "When I was young, before I ever left Earth, I had a teacher who told me something I never forgot. She said that the measure of a person is not what they keep for themselves, but what they give to others. The more you give, the more you become. The more you hoard, the smaller you get." Maya nodded slowly. "But that was just one person's philosophy. How could you gamble the future of all humanity on something like that?" "Because I touched the crystal," Marcus said. "And in that moment I understood something important. The architects had watched the universe for millions of years. They had seen countless species rise and fall. And do you know what they learned? The species that lasted, the ones that truly became great, were not the strongest or the smartest. They were the ones who learned to share." "Share what?" "Everything. Knowledge, resources, dreams. The species that tried to hoard power always destroyed themselves eventually. They became paranoid and jealous and cruel. But the species that gave freely kept growing and learning and becoming better. Sharing made them strong in ways that hoarding never could." Maya was quiet for a while. The last light of the sun faded and the stars began to appear above them, countless points of light in the endless dark. "The Vorthok's ambassador said something in my orientation briefing," she finally said. "He said that before humans came, the galactic community was dying. Every species was focused on protecting what they had instead of building something new. They had stopped exploring, stopped dreaming, stopped reaching for the unknown. And then humans arrived and changed everything." "Did he say how we changed it?" "He said we reminded them what it felt like to be curious, to want to know what was out there, to touch things we should not touch and go places we should not go. He said humans are like children who never grow up, and that is our greatest gift to the universe." Marcus laughed at that. "The Vorthoks always had a way with words, but he is not wrong. We are young and foolish and we make terrible mistakes sometimes, but we never stop trying. We never stop wanting to know more, and we never forget that the universe is big enough for everyone." Maya stood and offered her hand. "Thank you, Captain. I think I understand now. When we find new wonders out there, new secrets hidden in the dark, we should share them freely, because that is what makes us who we are." "That is exactly right, Lieutenant. Now go out there and find something amazing. The universe is waiting for you." She shook his hand firmly and walked back to her shuttle. Marcus watched her go, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the evening air. The next generation of explorers was ready. They would push farther and discover more than he ever had, and they would share what they found with everyone who wanted to learn. That night, Marcus dreamed of the vault again. He saw the crystal glowing in the darkness, and he felt the presence of the architects watching from somewhere far away. They were pleased, he knew, not just because their knowledge had been found, but because it had been found by the right species, by explorers who understood that some treasures are too precious to keep for yourself. The galaxy continued to change and grow. The knowledge from the vault spread to every corner of known space, and new discoveries were made every day. Scientists unlocked the secrets of how the universe began and how it might end. Engineers built structures that would have seemed like magic to earlier generations. Artists created works of beauty that moved beings across all species to tears. And through it all, humans remained at the center of the great collaboration, not because they were the smartest or the most advanced, but because they never stopped inviting others to join them. They built research stations and welcomed scientists from every species. They established colonies and made room for anyone who wanted to live there. They explored the unknown and shared their discoveries freely. The architects had predicted that humanity would take 2 million years to reach the stars. They had been wrong by a vast margin, but they had been right about something else. They had believed that somewhere in the universe, there was a species foolish enough to touch unknown crystals and brave enough to give away ultimate power. They had believed that such a species would change everything. They were right about that. In the end, the story of the hidden treasure was not about the knowledge that was found. It was about what humanity chose to do with it. They could have become rulers of the galaxy, feared and powerful and alone. Instead, they became friends of the galaxy, trusted and respected and surrounded by partners from every species. That was humanity's real treasure, not the ancient knowledge of the architects, though that changed everything. The real treasure was the choice they made to share it, the choice to be generous instead of greedy, open instead of suspicious, welcoming instead of hostile. The architects had been waiting millions of years for someone to make that choice. They had hidden their vaults and made them impossible to open, testing every species that came looking for treasure. And in the end, a young species from a small planet had passed the test simply by being themselves. Curious, foolish, brave, kind. The discovery had restored ancient knowledge to the galaxy, but more importantly, it had proven something about the beings who made it. Humanity was ready to take their place among the great species of the universe, not because they were powerful, but because they understood something that power alone could never teach. The best things in life are the things we share. And so the story ended, not with conquest or glory, but with friendship. The hidden treasure of the architects became the common inheritance of all species. The ancient knowledge lifted everyone up together, just as its creators had hoped. And humanity, the species that should not have succeeded, became the binding force that held the galactic community together. It was perhaps the most human ending possible, not a victory but a gift, not a triumph but a partnership, not the end of a story but the beginning of countless new ones. In the years and centuries that followed, countless beings would look up at the stars and remember the humans who had changed everything by giving it all away. They would tell stories about Captain Marcus Webb and his crew, about the crystal that tested hearts instead of minds, about the choice that shaped the future of the galaxy. And somewhere out there in the dark spaces between stars, other vaults still waited. Other treasures still lay hidden, patient as the universe itself. There would be more discoveries, more wonders, more chances to prove that humanity deserved the faith the architects had placed in them. The explorers were ready, the universe was waiting, and the adventure was just beginning.